Don't bother coming to the wedding. If you care that much, just watch it on YouTube. Mom. I stared at the text message on my phone, reading it 3 times before the words truly registered. My son, Jordan, had just uninvited me from his wedding. The same wedding I'd been funding in its entirety for the past 8 months. I sat quietly in the corner office of Varela Labs, the pharmaceutical company I built from scratch, feeling a cold hollowness settle deep in my chest. My name is Lorraine Mercer. I'm 58 years old and have spent the last 3 decades learning that people will take every ounce of what you offer them and still ask for more. But this crossed a line I never thought my own child would dare to approach. Setting the phone gently on my mahogany desk, I looked out at the Seattle skyline. Rain slid down the glass in mournful streaks, which somehow felt appropriate. Just yesterday, I had approved the final payment of $45,000 for the flowers alone. The venue in Tuscany, the 5-course dinner for 200 guests, the imported champagne, the designer gown, everything. Altogether, nearly $300,000. Money I wired without a second thought because I believed I was investing in my son's happiness. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had built a $50 million empire, yet somehow raised a son who felt completely entitled to shut me out of the most important day of his life, while expecting me to fund every last decadent detail. The wedding was set for Saturday at a historic villa just outside Florence. I was supposed to fly out the next morning. Jordan's fiancée, Camille, had always made it clear she thought I was too involved. Controlling, she called it. What she didn't understand was that when you're writing the checks, you earn the right to have a say. But apparently, my financial support didn't even warrant a seat at my own son's wedding. I picked up the phone again and typed a short message in return. Have a wonderful time, sweetheart. Then I scrolled to my assistant's number. Monica had worked for me for 12 years and understood the nuances of my business dealings better than most attorneys. I typed a single line that would change everything. Call it off. As soon as I hit send, something shifted inside me. This wasn't about the wedding anymore. This was about respect, boundaries, and teaching my ungrateful son a lesson he would never forget. He wanted to cut me out? Fine. He could do it without my money. I had always known Jordan was spoiled, but I blame myself. After his father passed away when he was 12, I buried myself in work and tried to compensate with comfort. Private schools, luxurious vacations, a trust fund that would set him up for life. I gave him everything I never had growing up in a rough neighborhood of Detroit. The warning signs began about 2 years ago when Jordan got engaged to Camille Dyer, a social media wannabe from an old-money Boston family. From our very first encounter, Camille made snide comments about my new money background and how different our lives were. She had that saccharine smile that masked barbs sharper than steel. "Oh, Lorraine, how charming that you're still working at your age," she said at their engagement party. My mother retired at 55 to focus on her art collection and philanthropy. I should have seen it then, how she was slowly turning Jordan against me. Our weekly dinners became monthly, then stopped altogether. Phone calls became occasional texts. Texts became silence unless he needed something. Funding the wedding had been my last attempt to bridge the gap. When they shared their dream of a destination wedding in Italy, I immediately offered to cover the cost. Jordan's eyes lit up with that same spark I remembered from when he was a boy. Excited, expectant. But Camille's face told a different story. She looked almost irritated that I had offered before she could gracefully manipulate it out of me. Every conversation after that became a negotiation. Camille wanted the finest of everything, and I became the villain whenever I asked reasonable questions about the budget. When I suggested a stunning and more affordable ceremony in Napa Valley, she accused me of trying to sabotage their dream. "This is our day, Mom," Jordan whined, his tone eerily reminiscent of a sulky teen. "Can't you just support us without trying to take over?" Watching my son morph into someone unrecognizable was the worst part. The little boy who used to call me every Sunday was now someone who contacted me only when another transfer was needed. Camille had successfully turned me from a mother into an ATM, and I let it happen. I was desperate to cling to whatever connection remained with my only child. But sitting there, listening to the rain, I realized the connection was an illusion. They had always planned to leave me out, probably hoping I'd find out too late to do anything. They underestimated me. Monica's reply came quickly. "Understood. How far do we take this? I smiled for the first time in weeks and typed back, all the way. The next morning, everything kicked into motion like clockwork. Monica showed up to the office at 6 a.m. sharp, carrying a stack of contracts and a look of determined resolve. She had seen this side of me before. I never made empty threats. The venue contract includes a 48-hour cancellation clause with full refund, she began, laying out documents. The caterer, florist, photographer, all cancelable with 24 hours notice. Your legal team has been reviewing it all since last night. I nodded. Timing is everything in business, and I had always been excellent with timing. What about the guests? Do we have the invitation list? Camille's assistant was helpful. Thought we were coordinating transportation, Monica replied, smirking. Most of the guests are staying at the same hotel in Florence. I have the full list. The simplicity of the plan was almost poetic. Everything had been booked under my company's name. My credit cards, my contracts. Jordan and Camille had never transferred a single vendor to their names. They had no legal claim, no backup plan. My phone lit up, Jordan calling. I let it go to voicemail. His message, "Hey Mom, just confirming everything's still on track for Saturday. Camille's a little anxious about the vendors. Call me, okay?" The nerve. 3 days after disinviting me, he was calling to make sure I was still handling everything. I deleted it without reply. Monica looked up. The hotel confirms Jordan Mercer and Camille Dyer checked in last night. Their rehearsal dinner's tonight. Perfect, I said. Execute the cancellations in sequence. Vendors first, then the venue. Everything gone by noon. While Monica made the calls, I booked a ticket to Florence. If my son wanted me to watch his wedding online, he was in for disappointment. There would be no wedding, only a lesson in consequences. The final call Monica made was to the villa. I watched her expression closely as she calmly explained to the event coordinator that the Mercer wedding was canceled, effective immediately, due to a family emergency. When she hung up, she looked at me with something close to admiration. "It's done," she said. "Everything's canceled. Do you want me to start retrieving the deposits?" "Not yet," I said, already formulating my next move. I've got a better idea. The flight to Florence gave me 12 uninterrupted hours to craft the perfect plan. While Jordan and Camille were likely enjoying their rehearsal dinner, completely unaware that their dream wedding was unraveling, I was 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, finalizing what would become the most satisfying deal of my life. I hadn't built Virella Labs into a global leader by being passive. I knew how to turn any setback into an opportunity. The Villa Ravello, was breathtaking. A 16th century estate nestled in the Tuscan hills with terraced gardens, a charming chapel, and accommodations for 50 guests. I had selected it myself after reviewing dozens of options. It was exactly the kind of place a successful CEO might host an executive summit. Monica had done her research well. The villa's event coordinator, Signora Benedetti, had been crushed when the wedding was canceled, but her spirits lifted when I called to book the same weekend for a last-minute corporate retreat. I doubled the deposit Jordan had paid and promised to reserve the estate for future company functions. "Naturalmente, Signora Mercer," she said in accented English. "The villa is yours. We will make it perfect for your guests." What she didn't know was that my corporate guests were the same people originally invited to the wedding. During the flight, I spent hours drafting a flawless email that went out to every person on Camille's guest list. Subject: a change in plans, a celebration of new beginnings. Dear friends and family, due to unforeseen circumstances, Jordan and Camille's wedding has been postponed indefinitely. In light of this, I, Lorraine Mercer, would be honored to welcome you to Villa Ravello for a weekend of celebration, gratitude, and new beginnings. Please consider this a personal gift of thanks for your friendship and support over the years. Warmly, Lorraine Mercer. Responses began arriving before we even landed. Turns out, many of the guests were more excited for a weekend in Tuscany than the wedding itself. Camille's own grandmother replied, saying she was thrilled to finally meet the woman who built such an impressive company and was looking forward to speaking with someone who actually understood the business world. By the time I checked into my hotel separate from Jordan and Camille's, I already had 43 confirmed RSVPs. The florist happily repurposed the elaborate flower arrangements. The caterer transitioned the menu from wedding reception to corporate luncheon with ease. Even the string quartet was still available and grateful for the additional booking. The only thing I changed was the photographer. Instead of wedding photos, I hired a professional videographer to document the weekend retreat. After all, Jordan had told me to watch the wedding on YouTube. I intended to give him something worth watching. My phone buzzed constantly with Jordan's name, but I kept it on silent. His voicemails piled up, each one sounding more frantic than the last. By the time I met the hotel concierge, I had fully stepped into the role of host. "Benvenuta, Signora Mercer," the concierge greeted me. "We understand you are here for a special occasion?" "Yes," I said with genuine peace for the first time in months. "It's going to be quite the celebration." As I rode the elevator to my suite, I reflected on that cold little message Jordan had sent me, the one that started all of this. He wanted me to watch from a distance, to be a spectator in the life I had built for him. What he was about to learn was that you don't get to exclude the hand that feeds you and expect the banquet to continue. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed, and some mothers, when pushed too far, will rewrite the entire script. Saturday morning in Tuscany was clear and cool. I woke in my hotel room feeling light and energized. For the first time in months. It felt like the morning before a major presentation, except this time it wasn't about business. It was something far more personal. My phone screen showed 37 missed calls from Jordan and 12 text messages, shifting from confusion to full-on panic. The first one, sent at 11 p.m. Florence time, read, "Mom, something strange is going on. The venue says our wedding was canceled. Call me ASAP." By 3 a.m., the messages had become increasingly desperate. "Mom, where are you? The florist isn't answering. The caterer says they are at a different event. What is happening?" The most recent one, just an hour ago, said simply, "Please, I'm begging you, call me back." I set the phone aside and ordered room service. Fresh croissants, Italian coffee, and fruit that tasted like sunshine. Today was my day, and I planned to savor every moment of it. At 10:00 a.m., I arrived at Villa Ravello to find a busy but well-organized scene. The staff was setting up for what they thought was a corporate event, but with all the floral arrangements and decorations, it looked more like a fairy tale than a business meeting. Signora Benedetti greeted me with a near-reverent enthusiasm. "Signora Mercer, everything is ready for your special guests. The chapel is prepared for your presentation." I had told her I would be giving a keynote speech about new beginnings in business. Technically, that wasn't a lie. "Yes," I replied, "I'll be speaking about the importance of loyalty and respect in professional relationships." The first guests started arriving by noon, Camille's Boston relatives, a bit confused by my email, but curious enough to come. Her Aunt Margaret, a stern woman in her 70s, approached me with restrained curiosity. "I must say this is highly unusual," she said, eyeing the elaborate setup. "Camille never mentioned how involved you were in the wedding planning." "Oh, I was very involved," I said, with a smile that had a racer's edge. "Some might say none of it would have happened without me." More guests trickled in, Jordan's college friends, business partners of mine who had been invited as a courtesy, distant relatives clearly more interested in the free Italian getaway than in family obligations. By 4 p.m., the villa was full, and the irony was almost delicious. My son's wedding guests were now attending my celebration instead. The photographer I had hired was capturing everything beautifully. Candid moments in the gardens, formal portraits in the chapel, group shots on the terrace with the rolling Tuscan hills in the background. It was going to make for quite a video on YouTube. At 5 p.m., just as I was about to give my speech, my phone rang again. A call from the hotel where Jordan and Camille were staying. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail. The manager said, "Miss Mercer, your son is in the lobby. He's asking to see you urgently." I turned to Signora Benedetti. "If anyone comes asking for Lorraine Mercer," I said, "please tell them I'm unavailable. This is a private corporate event." She nodded seriously. "Of course, Signora. No interruptions." As the golden light of a late afternoon filled the villa and my guests began to gather in the chapel for my presentation, I felt a deeper sense of satisfaction than I'd ever experienced in business. Jordan had wanted to exclude me from the most important day of his life. Instead, I had created a new day, my own, with his guests, at his venue, on my terms. The chapel inside Villa Ravello was breathtaking. Warm golden light poured through stained glass windows, casting rainbows across the stone floor. 43 guests, many of whom had expected to be attending a wedding, were now seated in wooden pews, waiting to hear me speak. I stood where my son was supposed to stand, where vows should have been exchanged, and took in the room full of people who had come to celebrate his marriage. Now, they were about to witness something entirely different. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice echoing gently through the sacred space, "thank you for joining me on such short notice for this celebration of new beginnings." I looked out at the faces in the crowd. Camille's family, Jordan's college friends, my longtime business associates. Some looked confused, others curious, but all of them were listening. Many of you traveled a long way this weekend expecting to witness a wedding. Instead, you're witnessing something more valuable, a lesson in loyalty, respect, and the real meaning of family. Camille's grandmother leaned forward slightly, her sharp eyes focused on me with what seemed like approval. Jordan's former roommate shifted uncomfortably, already sensing the storm that was about to unfold. For 30 years, I've built my company on a principle. Relationships are investments. You give your time, your energy, your resources. And in return, you expect basic human decency. When that's violated, there are consequences. My phone, still on silent, lit up again with another call from Jordan. I didn't even glance at it. Some of you may be wondering why you received an invitation to a corporate celebration instead of the wedding you expected. I paused. The answer is simple. There is no wedding. Not today. Not here. Not funded by me. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the chapel. Eyes widened. Whispers spread. Realization hit them like a wave. 3 days ago, my son sent me a message uninviting me from his wedding, the very same wedding I paid for. Every dollar. His message ended with, "Just watch it on YouTube if you care so much." I scanned the room, holding eye contact with a few people who now looked stunned. But what he didn't understand is this. Caring and enabling are not the same thing. I let that hang in the air for a beat. The flowers you see. The music you'll hear. The dinner you'll enjoy tonight. All of it was intended for a couple who decided I wasn't welcome. They wanted my money, not my presence. They got neither. The silence that followed was so deep I could hear the wind stirring outside. But you, all of you, came here in good faith. You crossed an ocean for what you believed was a celebration of love. And because you showed up with open hearts, you deserve better. I gestured toward the chapel doors with a small, composed smile. So, let's go celebrate properly. Let's toast to the people in our lives who treat us with the respect we've earned. Let's have the party that they never deserved. The guests stood slowly, processing what they had just heard. Some nodded, some looked visibly impressed. A few smiled, like they were watching the final scene of a perfectly written movie. They began to file out of the chapel, buzzing with energy and excitement. As I stepped onto the terrace, my phone vibrated once again. This time, I answered. "Hello, Jordan." His voice was frantic. "Mom, what the hell have you done?" In the background, I could hear Camille sobbing. I stepped further out onto the terrace, watching the guests laugh and sip champagne beneath the Tuscan sun. "Language, sweetheart," I said calmly. "I did exactly what you told me to. You didn't want me at your wedding. So now, there isn't one. Are you insane? You've ruined everything. No, darling. You ruined everything the moment you decided I was good enough to fund your life but not be part of it." There was a long pause. I imagined him standing there in that hotel lobby, finally realizing the gravity of his actions. "You canceled our wedding," he said quietly. "No," I corrected. "I canceled my funding for your wedding. There's a difference. If you wanted to get married without me, you should have figured out how to pay for it without me." Then Camille's voice broke through the phone, line sharp, angry, desperate. "You vindictive witch! You destroyed the most important day of our lives!" I actually laughed. The most important day of your lives was supposed to be funded entirely by the woman you excluded. That's not a wedding, sweetheart. That's a robbery in white lace. Back inside, the photographer was setting up for group shots. Guests were clinking glasses, laughing, posing in front of the floral arch. Camille's grandmother was deep in conversation with my company's VP about biotech investments. Jordan's old friends were taking selfies under twinkling lights that had once been meant to shine on the bride and groom. "We're flying home," Jordan finally said. His voice was flat, drained. "This is over." "Yes," I agreed. It is. Your wedding is over. Your entitled attitude is over. And your access to my bank account? Definitely over. But my celebration? I smiled as a server handed me a glass of Prosecco. It's just beginning. I ended the call. Then I walked back to the party. Dinner that evening was flawless. The 5-course meal, originally planned to be the highlight of Jordan and Camille's wedding reception, was now a tribute to independence and self-worth. The imported champagne sparkled in crystal flutes as laughter echoed through the villa's candlelit dining room. I gave a few impromptu toasts, not about love or marriage, but about building something from nothing, about choosing integrity over blind loyalty, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who value your presence as much as your contributions. Near the end of dessert, Camille's grandmother, Eleanor Dyer, approached me with a quiet dignity that only old Boston money could carry. "My dear," she said, sipping her wine slowly, "I must tell you something. Camille and I haven't spoken in 2 years. Entitlement runs deep with that one." I raised an eyebrow. "When I received your invitation, I almost didn't come," she admitted. "But I'm so very glad I did. That boy of yours—" She paused thoughtfully. "He has no idea what he lost today." She placed a hand gently on mine. "And my granddaughter? Well, she's about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life." The photographer, catching the moment, approached us. "Signora Mercer," he said, in his lilting Italian accent, "would you like me to prepare the video for YouTube upload? You mentioned it earlier." I smiled, remembering Jordan's snide text. "Just watch it on YouTube if you care so much." "Yes," I said. "Make sure it's high quality. I want it to be worth watching." "What should the title be?" I didn't hesitate. "A Mother's Celebration of New Beginnings in Tuscany." The fallout from that weekend was seismic. The video went viral within days, over 2 million views. Thousands of comments praising me as a savage queen, CEO-level mothering, and even Mother of the Year. One headline read, "Woman cancels son's wedding. After he disinvites her, throws own party with his guests instead." Jordan and Camille's relationship didn't survive the humiliation. Within 3 months, they were over. Without my financial support, planning a replacement wedding was an impossible task. Camille returned to Boston, where even her family's money couldn't keep up with the lifestyle she'd grown used to. On my dime. Jordan lost the apartment, the leased luxury car, and most of his social circle. Apparently, when you can't foot the bill for 300 dinners or Ibiza weekends, your friends vanish quickly. For the first time in his adult life, he had to get a real job, customer service for a small tech company. No more trust fund cushion, no more last-minute wires from mom. Camille's social media presence evaporated overnight. Once people discovered her glamorous life had been funded entirely by the woman she'd tried to cut out, the backlash was immediate. Her follower count dropped like a rock. I received dozens of messages from people who had once kept their distance, now offering apologies, praise, or even investment opportunities after seeing how I handled it all. Now, 6 months later, I sit in my Seattle office once again, rain streaking down the windows, just like it did the day this chapter began. And I feel no regret. Jordan calls occasionally, usually when he needs help with rent or groceries. But our conversations have changed. They're more honest now, humbled, less entitled. Sometimes I wonder if he's finally starting to understand what it means to earn something, rather than just expect it. Building Virella Labs taught me that the most valuable lessons often come at the highest price. Sometimes the only way to make a smart investment is to stop throwing good money after bad. Jordan wanted to exclude me from his life while keeping my wallet. Instead, he learned the difference between love and leverage, and that a mother's generosity, once lost, is not easily regained.